Okay, this is Devil May Cry 5. Final thoughts. So, I will begin this final thoughts by saying that I will be mentioning DMC Devil May Cry, much to the dismay of DMC fans, because of what Capcom wanted to do with this series. It's sort of like over the past 10 years, I have to say that after doing a lot of research, Capcom has been trying to reboot it, Devil May Cry, for a very, very long time, which is, leads into that joke of me saying that they keep wanting to replace Dante, but they can't replace him with anybody else. And sort of, if you look at things like Devil May Cry 4 and DMC Devil May Cry, in Devil May Cry 4, they made a new character, but essentially it is just Dante Light, And then in this one, of course, both characters being Nero, they drastically altered his appearance, so to speak. And of course, DMC4 being sort of like a mess in the development cycle, brought in Dante back in anyways. And in DMC Devil May Cry, one of the more interesting fact about it is that Capcom kept pushing Ninja Theory to make a very different looking Dante. As in, originally, if you see a lot of the concept art for Dante that Ninja Theory had, they wanted to keep the white hair and the red coat. Oh, but Capcom, during the development cycle, kept pushing it to be like they wanted it to be for something else. And it was also sort of during that time around the 6 years ago that Capcom really wanted to push into the North American market. And you can see now that they're succeeding with games like Resident Evil, and there's one more game. How do I say this? It's like having playing some of the remastered versions of their new games, like Resident Evil, something like that. They're really catering to the North American fans, and that's what they wanted to do with this franchise when they brought it back. I think Monster Hunter was a success worldwide. And what is it? So Capcom wanted to reboot this series for quite a long time, and like during that time, everybody made, essentially Capcom made a lot of bad decisions. They just couldn't replace Dante. They wanted like a different lead, and they wanted a better story, which was as said by one of the directors, because Devil May Cry over the years has a lot of different directors. But, they couldn't fix that like over the years. So now we get DMC5. And DMC5 is sort of this almost like a peace offering for I don't know. I know that sounds strange, but like Capcom's peace offering to the fans of the original series. And sort of the other thing I want to mention is that Capcom wanted more out of the series, as in like they think they could make more money. Like they wanted the series to be like better than what it already was, and then they couldn't get it right. So now we have DMC5, and DMC5 sort of has all the things and characters and stories that the original fans want. This is because almost like all the characters come back, and sort of get into that a bit later. But Hmm. But there are some, yeah, there are some changes to DMC5. Right. What I wanted to say, sorry for pausing so long, um, is that after playing all of them, like I find them to be a fairly niche genre, as in sort of these super stylish, in-depth action RPGs, is sort of that more like Bayonetta. Because it's by that same team. It's like sort of this spectator like action sort of genre that's actually pretty nuanced within itself, and that fan base is not the biggest. And Capcom kept wanting to reach a wider audience, right? You move the ratings down a bit. You level the playing field a little bit, so it's not just for the hardcore gamers and stuff like that. And sort of, we're going into that right now, is that this game is. I don't know if it's because I've been just binging Devil May Cry, like playing through all the games, but I found this one to be particularly easier than some of the older titles, and I think this is mostly because I think older fans might never admit it, but like back in Devil May Cry 1, 2, and 3 stage, like there was just a limitation to the technology and design they didn't get right yet, or like that they just couldn't do with the technology they had at the time. So a lot of difficulty was sort of inflated by the fact that some of your controls were like bad. Like, I think, in my opinion. And the camera angles, the auto targeting system, because all action RPGs has inherently a type of auto targeting system, and those sort of things make them fairly technical and fairly frustrating. I think now we're discussing difficulty here from DMC 1 to 4, DMC Devil May Cry to this game. They took out all the green star, double star thing, as in you can't just use potions anymore. Like, you have to fight until you run out of HP, and then you have to use a full revive item, essentially. Or you can use your red souls that you get and do a revive. Essentially, you can buy back as long as you have the cash to do it. And let's see. Let me check here. I think I recalled. Too bad I can't really see the total numbers that times died. Right, I mostly die towards the end, right? Yeah, okay. And throughout the playthrough, if you played Devil May Cry before, or you are fairly experienced in terms of this action combat genre, you will have a pretty easy time with it, I think. I remember dying significantly less in this game than some of the other Devil May Cry games. And the older games' deaths were, half of them, at least half of them, were like frustrating deaths, as in like either we had to deal with some sort of camera angle, or it was sort of bad design decisions, as in the game not explaining or exploring, letting the player explore the mechanic enough before just pretending the player already knows like every single like nuanced thing about particularly set mechanic. And those were a lot of the frustrating mechanics in a lot of Devil May Cry's through like 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then for this one, it is a fairly well designed. And you will pick it up pretty easy if you played all the older titles. So, like, because if you are a new player, you can just get into this one. Like, you don't need to play any other ones. And this game does a good job of letting you understand what happens in the past. Because if you're new to this and you pick up a character like Dante, like you will be a little lost since Dante's style of combat is like very it can get very in depth if you get into it. He's almost like a fighting game character, and I feel like in this game he's like 3 fighting game characters packed into one, 3 complicated fighting characters packed into one, and then people normally don't play fighting games, anyways. Right. And how do I say? Well, it feels a little easy. Like I made this argument in DMC Devil May Cry. Trigger warning. I'm sorry. A way to talk about that game. It's just that games don't have to be like super hard to be fun, right? And then like I feel like there's a conflict of interest. I sort of used this in Yakuza 2, as in like the DMC fans wanted it to be very hard, but not being hard doesn't mean that it's not fun. So like players seeking the challenge, because as in all Devil May Cry games off releases, they usually have 1 to 2 difficulties, or maybe sometimes 3, and then this one starts with 2 difficulties, is basically normal and hard. And I played 2 on hard because they're not named that. They're named Human and Devil Hunter essentially. And then you have to do multiple playthroughs of like the harder difficulties to unlock, the greater difficulties, right? And sort of the older titles base difficulty was spiked up by quite a lot. And sort of one of the predominant things was that the game always judged you for how well you did to satisfy its, like categories, I guess. And this game is fairly forgiving. Because if you look at the total results here, like let's say in Devil May Cry 3, I got B's throughout all of them. And this is because using no items grants you an S, and then gathering enough orbs gets you an S. If you get 2 S's, you are pretty much likely to get a B throughout that game, even though all other categories are B's. And then in Devil May Cry 4, a lot of D, B's, and C's. Like Devil May Cry 4 is more varied, and I also very much don't like that game. This game is, how do I say it? It's not really focused on this aspect of the game, I felt, because people who are really good at a game can probably very easily get like SS ranking. And sort of I think it's I need to explore the mechanics a bit before just sort of discussing why it felt very easy sometimes, because some of these characters have some sort of like very overwhelming mechanics for like the enemy AI, and I don't think I have ever gotten these tools in a Devil May Cry game, because it's a new game, it has a lot of new stuff in it, but like there are just some like you feel overpowered when you're using them, right? Okay, so I think Nero is probably the most balanced out of all 3 characters, because in this game you switch between 3 characters, and that is Nero, V, and Dante. And Nero's shtick is that he has a bionic arm now, because his arm got cut off. This is not a spoiler because it's right in the trailers. And then you can get a arsenal of different arms, essentially, and each arm will have a different effect. Some arms are fairly simple, as in you press the input and the arm does the thing. Or the arm can be fairly complicated, as in you can do various different things to it. Like, for example, one of the hands called the Little Helper. You can call the Little Helper back, and you can stand on the Little Helper and then do fairly unique combos on that one arm alone. And then there's like 10 plus, there's at least like 8 plus arms in the game. And then all his other options is that they improved his EX as in that you don't need to do the frame perfect anymore on DMC4. And learning from both DMC4 and DMC Devil May Cry, they really just sort of worked out his grapple mechanic. And this is basically Nero's DMC4 arm, but like a lot improved a lot more. And sort of throughout like 99% of the playthrough, Nero is like the most, you feel the most balanced with him. You're not like doing anything broken. I'm talking sort of in terms of like action RPGs. Like his frames are like fine, and then there is a way to get maximum damage. And what I'm saying here is that Nero is probably the most basic of all the characters, even though he can get extremely complicated if you get into it, as always. Okay, so we're going to talk about V, and sort of the thing I want to talk about here is that the first couple mission I picked up with V, it just automatically seemed like he was broken because I was just pressing every single button I can press on my controller with my right hand. And sort of to discuss V's mechanic is that V is basically a magic summoner. And what's fairly unique about him, I'm going to use some fighting games terms here, so not to throw anybody off. When we play fighting games, people who are more hardcore into fighting games will talk about frame data. And what frame data means is basically how fast your move is and how long it takes for you to recover from that move. And knowing this information can basically determine how fast you move through the, any fighting game. And then for V, the thing is that he has no, how do I say this? V doesn't attack with, his like own animations, right? He has no offensive frames other than his finisher. And sort of I want to think for this to make a bit more sense is that when Nero swings his sword, like it's his animation that of the model that he's doing. When Dante swings his sword, it's like his animation he's doing. Like every one of these attacks, they're based off of him. But for V, this is not the case because V summons monsters. They just like appear out of the ground, and you can have three summons out at the same time. And these summons have their own individual animations that V doesn't have to. Or say, like V doesn't have to care about like attacking physically, and then he can just use all of his options as defensive options, as in he can just dodge all day, and then you can just press any other buttons. Like the crow's animation will be based off the crow's animation, and the Cougar's animation will be based off of Cougar. So you can literally just press square, triangle, and then the bird will attack, and then the Panzer will attack. And then if you press X at the same time, V can dodge, because V doesn't have to worry about his frames, his like attack frames at all. And of course, that being said, like being hit with this, like this is a very different style of character, and it's a very interesting take in the DMC universe. But like it was so off-putting because he was just like so powerful. Like it's like a little difficult to get like a good score on his styles with a Nero at the beginning, and then like once we switched to this one, it's just like every time we got in the fight, it was just SSS, SSS, SS, SSS. Because I was just pressing every single button, right? And then this is sort of like the overpowered thing. I felt like it felt good, like it was super fun, but like it was like a very different feeling than playing like normal Devil May Cry games. Okay, and then we're going to talk about Dante. And Dante in this game, he doesn't get just one double trigger. He gets a special double trigger later on, and then I think in both forms that Dante is just ridiculous. Like when he gets his super form, Like he deals just a massive amount of damage. Like it's ridiculous how powerful he is once he is in that form. And sort of like these are sort of the two suspects here when I'm talking about you feeling sort of just overpowered in these games, because you never really feel that in like the older games. You certainly feel like a stylish fighter in the older ones, but you didn't feel like this. Like you feel like a badass. Like the demons aren't shit, except for poor Nero here. Right. And yeah, and sort of yeah, I'm just sort of putting that information out there in the end because I want to say like if DMC fans will like this or DMC fans will not, because it's like easy, and at like some points, like I don't know if as I said before, is the fact that I already played through all the Devil May Crys previously before coming into this game, but like it I think for the majority of the missions, it was fairly smooth sailing, as in like we didn't have any problems until like the very 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 end. And I really felt like they could have had 1 to 2 more hard boss fights, IMO. Like, because sometimes I would just like I would just switch it down there and go like, I don't know what this boss does, just fuck it, I'm just gonna go use my like super form and I don't have to learn what the boss does, right? And that's just sort of like inconceivable in like a DMC game. It's just like, oh fuck it, I'm just gonna press this overpowered button I have. And right, anyways, it's like I wish they had 1 to 2 more hard boss fights in the game, or like a lot of the boss mechanics were interesting. They're like very visually stunning and like interesting to fight, but they weren't difficult. But that's sort of like a personal preference. Like for the dungeoning itself, people have their own preferences, and I think the game did okay difficulty-wise for the majority of the dungeons. And it's not till like the very very tippy end that we get the boss fights that we want to fight in DMC. And what else? And yeah, it's like that whole bit about difficulty and the mechanics is like the core of what you I guess what I want to say is like what you want to talk about in like these type of games when you're doing sort of reviews. And I don't know, it's just like it's fun, and fun stuff doesn't have to be hard. Okay. And then I think just a side note here, since I've written down, like Dante's complexity goes from it's like, oh, like I know some of these things, to it's like they add another complex fighting game character onto himself. They add another fighting game character onto himself. And this is just like a personal thing I want to say, is that like there's only so many buttons on this controller I can press at the same time. Like I can't like I don't know how to position my thumb so like it hits like all of these buttons at once, so I can manually switch styles and move around effectively and press R3 and press thing. Like there's a level of complexity when it's just like it's a little like too crazy, and you know some people love that. It's just like when we get to this many like inputs, like give me the keyboard, like give me the keyboard, like let me just press like just one button for something instead of like just trying to desperately like push all the buttons, because like once it gets chaotic, it gets insanely chaotic. Like once all the effects are on screen, there's like 6 different attacks on the screen and you're trying to see which one is your own. And then you're just trying to remember, it's like I need to go to this form to do whatever the fuck I need to do. And yeah, that's gonna be the last bit about the mechanics. Okay, and I think we'll just move on to the character and story. And sort of just to put it out there, my attitude for majority of Devil May Cry, from Devil May Cry 1 to Devil May Cry 4, is that I really didn't give a shit about the story, like at all. characters weren't excellent, nor were they bad. So that's like my opinion on like the majority of the stories in it. Like the story is just an excuse for me to dick around in these sort of hard hack and slashy type of games. So that being said, at the beginning of this Final Thoughts, I talked about how Capcom kept wanting to redo Dante, like rework the series so it branches out to a worldwide audience, right? So, but for this game, they did a sort of peace offering with the story. It was like, okay, we're sorry for what we kept trying to do, and we just couldn't do it right. So let's just go back to our most successful DMC, which was DMC 3, right? Devil May Cry 3. And what makes this slightly different experience than the DMC 3 is the added element of Nero to the story. So that adds a different sort of flavor to it at the end. Because if you play DMC 3, you basically know this story. And sort of the running cliche in all DMC games, or like the trope they want to run with that people to remember DMC by, is characters with daddy issues, essentially. And this game's got issues with its dad, and there's more than one new character here that has issues with his father, and that's sort of the running shtick of the show. And I sort of want to mention here is that they really just went back to, like, story and character wise, back to the old formula of what made them successful in the first place. Like, they really didn't add anything new other than the new character Nico. And before we're talking to Nico, is just that okay, this is a big spoiler here, so if you haven't played it yet, just maybe tune out for the next 5 minutes. It's like they just went back to Virgil. And sort of, I've seen not only TV shows, comic books, or anime do this. It's just that when the series is sort of like they don't know what to do with the series, they just bring back the villain that everybody wants. Just like, well, Batman, what were we gonna do? All right, just fucking bring back the Joker again. It's like, oh yeah, Joker, we know the Joker. And sort of like a lot of like long-running series that have been revamped, rebooted, do these kind of things. And for this one, is Virgil, and they literally, it's not true. They do a lot of the things that worked for DMC3, and they did it here, and sort of that was the swan song for this game. So, right. I guess we're gonna talk about Nico. I really like Nico in this game because she acts like the comedy relief. So she's sort of like this trashy fan service character. Like all the other female characters are trash in this game. They're basically there just for fan service, as in literally just there for the fans. Like, this is Lady, you know her, right? This is Triss, you know her, right? Triss has like one important line. It's like, I got daddy issues too. That was their important line. It's like, yeah, okay, get out of here. Just be naked. And of course, like, this game contains all the corny, like, campy shit that all the other Devil May Cry has. Like, remember Devil May Cry characters like naked at the beginning of the game, and there's a scene like that too. And then, Dante is an obnoxious shenanigans. And it feels really weird, to say that I don't give a shit about like the narrative overall in the video game, since I think I stated multiple times on this channel that's probably the thing I care about the most in a video game. And then for these games, I'm playing it for the gameplay, which is excellent. And yeah. Like, this is probably the best story they have done so far, but that being said, I still don't. I just think it's okay. It's like, it's not bad. It has its moments, but it never reaches anything like above what it is for. Like everything in this game, I feel like is catered to the original DMC fans like, okay, we're sorry, we're gonna stop trying to revamp this thing, and we're gonna do something, we're gonna make it work, right? And that's why they changed. They only changed his to some of the character designs were fundamentally Nero because they just didn't want him to look like Dante Light anymore, right? Is there anything else? Let's see. Oh, well, I should just say everything I want to say. Right, that's DMC5. It's a lot of fun. I don't know. I think it's an 8 out of 10. And then I think it's a like fantastic 8 out of 10. Like it's really really fun. It got the polish it wanted. And I'm just glad it didn't turn out to be another like Devil May Cry 4 situation. Or like that game was unpolished as ass and like nobody ever references it. like man, it's like some of the shit you can do with like Dante, like some like riding around on a rocket arm with Nero, like getting just like making the screen into confetti, especially making the screen into like 7 different type of laser beams, lightning blasts, sharp edges everywhere. It's a lot of fun, bloody fun. And then I guess if you want the hardcore like difficulty, you just gotta keep beating it until you get that difficulty. I think it might be nice for like people who are looking for the harder difficulty to maybe get that off the bat. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. It was just a lot easier than I anticipated. Yeah, like I had high expectations for like the difficulty. It was like getting ready to like sit here for like hours on end to beat people up, and then we only did that for like the final section of the game. I had a lot of fun with it.